we think as parents, this debate is mainly talking about what best for our children, how our children can get beneficiaries, and how they can live in a very safer and also conducive environment that help them to gain much more beneficial. Three things I'm going to say in this debate. One, I'm going to explain about the parent, the first generations of immigrant parents, how do they actually behave in the first place. Second of all, I want to talk and explain about beneficiaries for these people if they are choosing to live and raise children in enclave. And lastly, I'm going to talk about the comparative benefit as to how our motion it is much more substantial to begin with. Let's talk about number one. We think that in terms of interest of parents and first generation immigrant, they are willing to be the best for their children or the family. They are coming to this country due to a certain variety of reasoning. They are moved to the country because they are willing to gain much better economic gain or even safer place in their origin, in compared to their origin country, or they are willing to live up their quality of life. Like what happened when American dreaming to attract these people to come to America in the first place in terms of getting much more better education and welfare. But we need to note this, that in order for these first generation immigrants to work better in this country and raise the children in a better way, they have to utilize a substantial parenting to make sure that anything about the children goes in line with their interests, goes in line with their agenda, and it really makes the children in a better way. I think the characteristic of these first generation immigrants, aside from the identity of color, they also another code, like they have really grounded local wisdom as to how they have medicine, local wisdom and food, local wisdom in the first place, as to how they really have a faith of religion, and they are willing to their children to practice the religion in a very better way, or they are really having cultural heritage that is really important in terms of expressing their life and actualizing their life in terms of art and art. But the point is, first generation immigrant parents of color have a bottleneck to actualize all of this conception in this predominantly white country. Well, let's talk about this predominantly white country. We think that in this country there are a variety of movements. That is to say, they are right-wing conservative that really preserve their traditional values, that really preserve their own identity as a nation. They are really have a bottleneck to accept any other identity coming from the outside because they usually grounded in their nationalism. And it is really grounded in every political agenda of a politician or policy makers that somehow, like what happened in the US when there is lots of politicians and other policy that really avoid the immigrant, or what happened in other predominantly country that really, they really have a bottleneck in order to accept other people. But the point is that they are not ready to accept any kinds of, first immigrant coming from other country that can somehow can disrupt their interest in the first place, and that's the things that we have to consider. We have to note this, that in this debate we have to actualize our parenting in strategic way. That is to say, our stand is clear. We are going to choose to live and raise children in ethnic enclave. What do we mean by ethnic enclave itself? Why it is give a mutual exclusivity for these people in order to raise the children and gain much better quality of life for these parents and the children. I think that if we are talking about ethnic enclave, there is really talking about a high concentrations of ethnic community that is living in certain areas in the cityscape. Like what happened in Little India in Singapore, for example, or Chinatown in Paris and other place, that they are really conscious of a certain communities that coming from the origin countries, but they are assembled in this country, in this area, in order to assimilate themselves, in order to collectivize themselves, in order to create a much better, safer environment, and they are really want to live in that particular things. But we have to notice that in this particular places, there are lots of exclusive benefit that our parents and our children can get. For the parents, at least this community and this ethnic enclave really important in order to actualize all the parenting method that they are willing to express to their children, that they are willing to continue to their children. What happened, they can really have a safe place for actualizing the religious actualization, for example, because in this place there are a lot of mass or even a place for religious practice, or even if they are willing to have a good food, like what happened in Chinatown when there is lots of food as a bank in this area that can actually express, and they are not really trying to get into another place that is really create much severe outcome that can harm these people. We think that this place as a safer zone, as a sense of belonging for these people is really important to raise these children in this particular idea. Comparatively, if we are as the first generations of immigrants and we are willing to raise our children outside this ethnic enclave, that is to say we are going to assimilate with society in any kinds of place. We think that it is too risky to begin with. It is really more harm that coming to our children. Why? Because back to the characteristic of certain amounts of people that they actually have a bottleneck and avoidance for the existence of us. Even there are lots of cases where the racism comes to these people, and lots of prejudice that disenfranchise and make the kind of plunder for this immigrant to come in. Imagine if the children to get those kinds of racism, discrimination coming from this predominantly white country. You need to consider about the psychological condition, the mental health that can be much more severe in that particular area. Comparatively, in our ethnic enclave, there's a say if they are in school, ladies and gentlemen, there is a school in this particular place that can really have the same identity that they have, for example, and they have a sense of belonging in terms of this place, and they are not really get awkward to the new condition in the new country, but gradually we are trying to to value and also comprehend any other external values coming outside this ethnic enclave, and we are time by time willing to trying to prepare ourselves to stage our mentality and also to create a safer zone in order if there is a discrimination coming from our place. But what is the inclusive benefit that we can get from this ethnic enclave? I think that the very severe problems that is happening here is all about the narrative coming from the people, the prejudice coming from the people. That is to say, but by this ethnic enclave, it creates a certain amounts of benefit in terms of how we gradually change the narrative itself. Why? Because in this particular ethnic enclave, we can create such an economic zone like what happened in the Chinatown, when there's a lots of tourists coming to the Chinatown in order to experience the food delicacy in this particular place. And this benefit really changed gradually the narrative coming from the people that this immigrant also beneficial for the people, and they are really bring a certain amount of benefit to the people. They are not as harm as bad as it is, as the evil as it is in the first place. Or what happened like in India when they actually provide more goods and services for the people in Singapore, and that's why we are back to purpose.
Kelihatan? Oh. Sorry, COVID. Beginning in 3, 2, 1. As a child, you're very fragile. You need people to depend on. You don't have the rational calculus to see the world and to process it. You need your parents, you need your friends, you need your community, you need your teachers to tell you how to process things like this. Is the basic characteristic of a child. But why do you think that especially a person of color or a child of color living in a predominantly white world, that they still need to feel that safety and find more places so that they can depend on, they can lean on, and for them to feel safe in this country where they're viewed by people as alien or as the other? But why do you think that this race element matters? The problem with race, or a characteristic of race, is that you can't cover it, ladies and gentlemen. Unlike religion, where you can wear a cross and you just take it off, or in some cases you can choose to wear more casual clothes than your normal Muslim clothes, or etc. You can hide your own religion, or you can hide your own sexuality. But when it comes to race, this is the melanin of your skin. You cannot cover it. This is always something that is going to be inherent to you from your life till your death. But what happens when you raise a child who's a child of color in a predominantly white world? My first speaker has already told you that the world is not ready yet for us, especially for our children. We've seen the numbers of police brutality that happens to most African Americans. We see, for example, a lot of violence that happens in to Latinos or stuff like that. When our child is living in a world that is more predominantly white, he's going to grow without a solid sense of his own identity. Right? As a child, you don't think about race at all. You think that you're just one of the normal kids. You're just like them. That you're going to grow like them, and you're going to experience life just like them. But slowly and surely, this assumption is going to be questioned. Mom, why are these kids? Why did my friend's mom tell them to go away from me? Am I that dangerous? And stuff like these kind of things are going to happen to these children, right? Then they need a safety net where at least that safety net is going to accept them for the color of their skin. Because as much as we like to think, people of color are never going to they are going to experience the same privilege of white people. In a long term, yes, but this is our child we're talking about, right? That they need a place where this community at least has a similarity to them and has a relatability towards them. But you might say, aren't you a parent? Isn't that a basic enough of a safety net for you to have? No, because the child is eventually going to go to school, is eventually going to play outside, is eventually going to experience his first prom, is going to experience graduation and other stuff like that. That means that the life outside there, the community where he experiences those things, are important in shaping his own identity, his own perception of his own self and stuff like that. When he lives in a world that is predominantly white, he's going to be denied that aspect of his own culture, right? He's going to feel as if he was alien, and at worst he's going to still experience racism from those type of people. But what happens when he lives in our racial enclave? There are people that still look like him. That he's not alien. At least they're alien, but they're not alien alone. They have other people to talk to. They have peers that actually look like them. They also have other parents or other people that actually going to help them. Remember that these racial enclaves are also characterized by a strong community bond in which people take care more about each other because they know that they're the only people there and they're the only people that share the same ideology in a country that sometimes is hostile towards them. They have nobody but each other. We choose that if this kid lives in this country, we think in this community, it is going to be better for him, safer for him, where his identity is going to be accepted, where he's going to feel like he's related to everyone and he feels safety. And as a parent, that's the basic thing that we want, right? For our children to feel good about themselves and not question themselves. Mom, why was I born with this type of skin? Why am I treated differently? These kind of things are horrifying for a child. They need a place for them to seek safety. But you might tell us that this is sometimes important for them to learn about tolerance, for them to survive the racism of the harsh world. Or perhaps if you are a more naive person, that you want this child to be the gateway for other white people or for other white kids who are also their peers to understand race and to understand racial relations, because it's for a greater good to make this community more heterogeneous and more accepting. How dare you impose this type of burden to my child? This is my child. This is someone that I raised. This is a piece of me, literally. Why would I want to impose them the trial and error process of a movement on top of him? He is still a child, for God's sake. He still wants to experience happiness. He doesn't want the burden of the world just on top of him, and experiences it while he's actually growing and he's in his most fragile situation. We say that it is our right as a parent to protect our children and protect them from the implicit racism that's going to happen. But you might say, no, he's going to grow more self-centered. He's not going to understand the white people and stuff like that. We say that when you raise our children until the moment that they're actually safe to leave home, where they have a solid sense of identity, they know who they are, they know where they come from, they know their history and their family and stuff like that. We've created a solid safety net for them when they go outside, that they already have their own self-identity and their own rationale to experience the world and understand what's going on outside. And we say that when you have that basic safety net, you have that basic sense of identity within you, it is better you're more equipped to battle racism out there. When it's too much for him, he can go back to our place and a community, maybe perhaps even after our own deaths, because the communities are still alive there and his own peers inside that community. We think that this is where that the moment when they're at the lowest, they can come back to us. Compared to your case, what happens under your case? That this child grows up questioning or even hating their own skin color, they question their identity, and when they grow up, they'll try to be something that they cannot achieve because it is literally attached to their own bodies. We think that with this safety of your own identity and your own community, this is better for the sake of the child. Thank you.